Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Mama, please don't worry about me, 'cause I'm about to let my heart speak. My friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Back and forth with the bullshit. I know I said it before, I don't mean it. It's been a while since I had your attention, so it might hurt to hear this. Dreams we had don't ever fall away. We can't leave them if we stay the same. And I can't do this for another day. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
What's up, everybody? So this is a special edition. We're gonna have to keep it a little quick. It's not gonna be too short, but it's also not gonna be our normal time span because I'm out here at ETHDenver today. I'm actually here at the event with the XRP meetup. So I'll talk to you about what happened today at ETHDenver. Some really great conversations. I'll talk to you guys about the interview with the street that went really great. And then I'll talk to you guys about what we're going to be doing up here with the XRP community. Some really great stuff coming out. But generally, we're out here today at ETHDenver. It's been a really great event. Walked in, I was one of the first people here. I got here at, I don't know, 8:30, 8:45, and I was one of the first ones here. Uh, Walked into a meditation room. Never been to ETHDenver before, so that was a first for me. Walked into a meditation room. It actually was really amazing. Had about 30 minutes. You guys, if you guys saw my post from this morning, you'd have seen that. And then went into several great conversations. Met up with the Hedera team. Met up with a couple other networks that were there. Canton was represented. Bunch of cool new projects. A lot of DeFi. A lot of cool things happening. But probably the coolest thing was being able to talk with the guys from the street. So we spent about 20 minutes. That interview is going to come out in the next couple weeks. I don't know exactly when, but that'll be dropping. We spent a lot of time talking about the DAO. We spent a lot of time talking about how the DAO, the BSL token, plays into the liquidity mechanisms that we utilize for, interoperability between Swift, between chains, between different settlement types. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about that. We spent a fair amount of time talking about how cooperatives and credit unions are really embracing and leaning into these new systems and how these new systems are going to fundamentally transform the way money moves, the way value moves, the way value is secured, the way value is protected. Security and protection are a little bit different. The protection mechanisms that we offer with Secura and the mechanisms that are built into our infrastructure for security and how those align with what really financial institutions best in class are looking for. So there was a lot of really great information that we shared with the guys on the street. And it's really exciting because we're going to be one of those regular voices that's showing up on the street. And really, our whole team introduced Becky, Jack, and Liz to the guys at the street. And so we'll now be a part of the rotation on the roundtable of the street. So that was a really exciting discussion. We had a really great board meeting today. I can talk about that a little bit. We also had we just made a new hire, which is another really exciting person coming on board. I do believe he signed, so I can talk about that a little bit. But really great board meeting today. You know, we've got some of the strongest people in finance, period, on our board. You know, of course, Jack Antonini has been on the board for a while now. He's the former CEO of Nicuso. He's also the former CEO of um, USAA Bank, the former CEO of Cardtronics, and recently brought on Glenn Wheeler. Glenn Wheeler's a really, really amazing um, person to have on the team. His experience is in corporate credit unions. Corporate credit unions. So there's this idea that I don't think a lot of people really understand about the United States banking system. It's really a four-tiered system, and I'll do it a little bit a little bit of explaining, and that'll maybe help everybody understand where we're focused, how we're focused, and kind of some of the maybe some of the information you see coming out that might not immediately make sense. The top tier is the Fed, of course. The Fed, we're plugged in. We're a FedNow provider, direct FedNow provider. Not a big list, but certainly there are others on that list. We are one of the only Web3 companies. There's a handful of other Web3 companies or companies that support Web3. One of the kind of people, the closest competitors to on the money movement side is Metallica. So we've talked about them. We see them a lot in the market. Generally, though, um, the Fed doesn't facilitate money movement. Of course, we all know this directly with consumers, directly with the retail segment of the market. And most of the times, they don't even directly facilitate money movement with the banks themselves directly. And so there's this intermediary layer called bankers banks and corporate credit unions. And what they do is they act on behalf of, or they act as a service provider to the smaller, uh, more local community banks. And so you have this multi-tiered system. It works really well because the cost structure can be a lot lower and a lot more communities can get access when they can go through a corporate or when they can go through a banker's bank. And so recently our focus has been creating relationships with the bankers banks and with the corporate credit unions to get that one to many spread. So you guys heard us, early on, our focus went from, instead of creating a platform that was direct to consumer, our focus and trying to convince one person at a time. Certainly, we still have the bank social wallet and all those great features and functionalities are still out there and still in existence. The pivot, though, from a spread is the next phase of that was going into credit unions, going into banks, going into community banks, going into the financial institutions to get that one to many spread. So one financial institution puts us into, hundreds of thousands, millions in some cases, people with one integration, one deployment, one set of marketing, people who are already using that system, right? And we plug right into that system. You've seen that at Credit Union of Texas. You've seen that at Great Lakes Credit Union. You've seen that at Credit Union One. You've seen that at now. There's a number of other ones that I can continue to talk about. The Prestige and Suman, and there's just a whole host of them that we've been working with for a super long time. And these are guys that are all using our products. They're not just using pilots or not just signed on to generally what you would think of. And there may be some background noise over here, so I apologize. I'm over here with the XRP meetup group and they're getting set up. But generally, the phase two of that was getting traction into the individual credit unions, the individual banks. And at this point, now that we're up near 50 financial institutions, the focus has we're not leaving that direct You can't hear the background noise? All right, good. So the change and the shift has been, instead of just going after credit unions one on one, not that we're not going after banks and credit unions directly. We still got some, deals across the spectrum, large deals, small deals. We're looking at all of those, but certainly we've pivoted a large portion of our growth, and really that's the difference. Is we've shifted over the last 6 months from a product market fit company where we were trying to get those initial implementations complete into the financial institutions. We got those complete. Those are running great. You've seen a lot of information come out from core providers, from digital banking providers. We're VIP certified with Jack Henry, for example, and with a lot of other core providers and digital banking providers as well. And so the pivot now has been, or maybe the focus has shifted a little bit, maybe call it, 70, 30, 60, 40, from where it was 80% focusing on individual credit unions to now we're focusing on the bankers banks. And so Glenn, and then I'll tell you about the other gentleman that we just brought on board, which is as exciting as Glenn. Glenn Wheeler is a 30-year um, um, just juggernaut in the payment space specifically. So a lot of these corporate credit unions, they facilitate payment, liquidity management on behalf of those smaller institutions. And that's what Glenn has done for the last 25, 30 years. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around there. Glenn's experience is really interesting because he went from what was the predecessor of Zelle. So the place he was at 20 years ago, or something like that. The place he was at 20 years ago was a um, predecessor to Zelle. So so essentially what Glenn ended up doing was Glenn ran a consortium of banks who settled. They sold that into what was Bank One, and through that transition, and it's really interesting because Jack Antonini was around in that time. Not really sure all the moving parts, but they've talked so much, and I know this to kind of generally be true. But as Glenn was moving through Bank One and the predecessor of Zelle, which then, as it sold into Bank One, sold into Chase, and then became Zelle, Glenn went off and went to a corporate credit union that serves, I can't, it's over it's over 1,250 credit. You can go look it up. It's called Catalyst Corporates, where he was at before. And we've been working with Glenn, interestingly, for the last 3 years. We went back and looked at our emails, and we looked at when we first connected. And we first connected, the community will probably remember a lot of this because so much has happened. It just, the banks, while they move at a slightly slower pace, they move with intention, and they move with safety and soundness at the forefront, right? Regulatory clarity, safety, and soundness. This is kind of the big three. And we started engaging with Glenn Wheeler, back in 2022, late 2022, at the first Texas Blockchain Council meetup in Austin. And Becky was there. I was there. We brought in Kyle Hopman. We brought in, interestingly enough, John Ainsworth was part of that discussion. That was early on. John and I have known each other for almost, man, going on 5, 6 years now. And so Glenn Wheeler, we brought in a couple corporates. We brought in a number of community banks and credit unions. We brought in guys from an organization called SRM, Larry Pruss. And looking through all that, we ended up right after that meeting all getting together and drafting what would eventually become the Genius Act, right? Through several iterations. And it was fun. It was fun just looking back at the history there and looking at the document we drew up and then sent to the NCUA that eventually kind of made its way through, and seeing how that really laid the framework for what we felt like the Genius Act could be. But then looking forward, we've stayed engaged, and that is it. The corporate and the bankers bank ecosystem is a large ecosystem, right? They help thousands of financial institutions. Almost 95% of all financial institutions are tied in through a banker's bank to the Fed for money movement. And so as we continued moving along, stayed in touch with Glenn and his team over there at Catalyst, and we're still in touch with the team over at Catalyst and a couple of the really great people they have over there. Gentleman named Mark Keeling, who was also at that original event. Those guys have just been so great. They've really been watching the space and finding waiting for the right time to penetrate. And then it just so happened that there was great timing on being able to connect with Glenn and to make a really strong move into helping the bankers banks step into this space and step into kind of a multi-rail payment strategy that includes multi-chain stablecoin and includes multi-chain tokenized deposits, and that's spanning really every chain. We see different use cases on different chains, depending on what type of merchant services, depending on what type of um, um, she's it's a little bit of background noise throwing me off because they're doing some funny stuff back here. But everything from merchant services to peer-to-peer payments to bank-to-bank payments, A to A payments, really spans the gamut. And so what we understand is that likely, and because we're talking to a lot of different ones, they're not going to all pick the same chain. They're likely going to be on different chains, but that's okay because that's what this is for. That's why these systems exist, to be interoperable. I know that they're looking at every chain, right? And some of them are standardizing on one chain versus another. Um, they like our platform because our platform is truly multi-chain, directly on the chain. While we have direct and we have individual account, segregation account, and that composite key self custody, where you don't have to remember the seed phrase, but you're protected, and there are a whole bunch of mechanisms. But then also connecting into special flows needed for escrow and lending and servicing and all these other different types of fund flows that need to have different account types, different segregation types, different omnibus and custodial strategies. And that's where our partners, BitGo and Fireblocks, really bring a truly different operating capability and capacity to these institutions so that they can facilitate multi-chain, multi-use, multi-function workflows interoperably and seamlessly across each other. And so that's really what bringing on Glenn has helped us do, is solidify the move into the bankers banking space and into the cooperative corporate credit union space. Um, and really excited to announce. I think we'll make it a formal announcement here in the next couple days. But we brought on another gentleman from I believe Catalyst. I get this wrong, so don't skewer me if I'm wrong, but it's they're number one and two. So Aloya's either number one and Catalyst is either number two, or Catalyst is either number one and Aloya's number two. But we were fortunate enough just over the last week, because of Becky's great relationships and everything. Yeah, I think we could say this. We've signed, everything's good to go. We'll make the announcements soon, but it's all signed, it's all good to go. We've brought on a gentleman whose name is Jim Schneck, and he's a long time. He's got the same or similar pedigree to Glenn from the perspective of being engaged at the corporate banking level or the bankers banking level. But he has a whole different background that really lends well to go to market strategy, what we're looking at, how we're looking at penetrating the market. And so we're really excited to have these really amazing leaders, these really great leaders joining us and helping support penetration into that one-to-many model of the bankers banks, the corporate credit unions, and doing so in a way that brings their experience and brings along all their learnings into what a truly comprehensive and forward-looking strategy would be, not just for what we can deploy, but as we build out our roadmaps and as we build out future payment systems and future capabilities, ensuring that those learnings, those experiences, Becky says all the time, and I believe it 100%, at the end of the day, we're just moving money. And so these are different flows, these are different uh, capabilities on how we move money and how we transfer value. But it's certainly certainly we're moving money at the end of the day. And so that's kind of the reason why we see this as a really, really incredible move forward, really unique in the space to have this level and this breadth of knowledge and experience, and really the people. At the end of you hear me say all the time, the people are what does this. I mean, we have his ideas as good as anybody else in the world, and the difference is that we've been extremely fortunate to bring together the right people with the right experiences, and then move that into actual penetration in the market, into actual delivery into the market at scale and at speed. And so, the positioning that we have now with the really great board, bringing on great people like Jack, adding them to our great team, and I don't want to call out any specific people, but you know, an awesome sales team, an awesome executive team, a really great set of engineers, a really great set of onboarding and customer support people, a really great set of security and recovery teams. I mean, just a tremendous group of people who not only come up with some of the most innovative ways to move and protect and re-architect how the financial world works around us, but then to also take those ideas and turn them into, mold them and craft them and deliver these really great, really well integrated products that people really love to use. And so that's been our biggest difference. That's been the thing we've been focused on over the last few months. That's made a huge difference. And we're going to continue focusing on that. So that's a high level, just of kind of today to date, some of the things that continue to happen. I'll talk a little bit about the XRP meetup because that's really exciting. Going to be on a great panel. All right, am I back? All right, cool. So tonight we've got a really great panel. We're going to be talking about XRP. I think that one of the things that everybody understands is XRP is one of the premier players in the space. There's no doubt about it. I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we said otherwise. But the reality is that Hedera is an amazing product. Stellar is an amazing product. Algorand is an amazing product. Constellation is an amazing product. Cardano is an amazing product. I mean, there's so many really great and amazing products out there that are fundamental to the future of open finance, and that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight. Of course, the primary focus is on XRP, is in use cases of XRP, but certainly to give everybody a broader perspective of what we're actually seeing in the market. Yes, we do see XRP come up. We do, just across the board, not just from a token perspective, but really when you start to look at the entire Ripple ecosystem and what they're doing. Um, it's an absolute, you cannot dismiss the penetration in the market, the use in the market. We hear about it everywhere we go, but certainly not the only thing we hear. And I think that's important to help people understand. And so, tonight we'll be talking about. We've got a great panel. It's going to be made up of a stellar technologist who's worked at, who's basically helped build what the future of cloud has looked like. Started in the early '90s and worked his way through IBM and a number of, Amazon and a number of other really, really massive players, and architecting the early internet and architecting how cloud worked, and now has moved into the digital ledger space, and just some really great insights. We met the other day. That's going to be really fantastic. So I think they're going to be. I'll talk with Ray. I think Ray just showed up. We'll see if they're going to broadcast that. Um, and so we'll do that. And then the second gentleman, he's got really great experience in the real estate markets and the investment markets, and he's going to talk about some of the barriers and some of the maybe perceptions that people have of things that aren't working the way they need to, or maybe things they think we're still waiting on and regulations. And then I'm gonna follow it up with and kind of bring together the technology piece, the regulation piece, and what we're seeing and actually deploying in the market and seeing where the markets are going. Because, I certainly think that through 25, there was still a lot of um, uncertainty around how these systems would be used, how they would be classified, um, if they were institutional grade. There were a lot of questions, and those are probably the top questions. But certainly, once you answer those questions, it goes from there. How do you integrate it? How do you maintain it? How do you operationalize it? How do you monitor it? How do you protect it? There's so many questions. And over the last several years, we've been able to build the system that answers a lot of the how, and I would say the majority of the how. Um, and recently, with the Genius Act and with what you're seeing generally in the markets, the most important questions were answered, which were: Is this going to be legitimized long term? Is this something we can implement? Because that's really the thing, guys. I don't think it's fair to say that all banks don't move fast and all banks are predatory. I think that's just it's an inaccurate statement. And what we can definitely say is that there are forward-looking banks, there are credit unions and banks that are out there that are focused on helping their communities. And all they need to do is make sure that these systems are ready for prime time, right? That they're not gonna spend a bunch of time and implement something that's gonna turn out to be something that later has to be ripped out, or they get regulatory oversight, unnecessary regulatory oversight on them. And so that's what we've been balancing. And that's why this has been a longer road than a poly market, where poly market just went in and did whatever they want. Hats off to poly market, great product. But they went in, they did what they wanted, and they had to deal with the lengthening of time to get to market. But certainly, um, certainly the ability to deliver best in class experiences um, that bridge traditional finance with these new technologies, and not just be a point solution provider. What do I mean by point solution provider? So when we say point solution provider, the way to think about a point solution provider is a provider who only offers a single solution. And what we've seen in the markets over the last 20 years, 25 years, is you had the kind of the foundational institutional grade infrastructure players come out in the late 90s. Those were your Fiservs, those were your FISs, your Jack Henrys. They're still around. They're still great tools, great softwares. Um, but as the markets moved, as kind of needs moved faster and faster, um, a lot of fintechs spun up ancillary to those core infrastructures. And because these financial institutions didn't want to get left behind, they ended up getting into situations where we hear some institutions have as many as hundreds of vendors. And when you start to look at how you can manage infrastructure and be competitive in managing hundreds of vendors, when a solution like a Coinbase or a Robinhood or Cash App is really just building, you know, a single solution that encompasses all these different tools, it starts to be hard to compete. And what we did was we realized these types of things are cyclical, and they're driven by market factors, they're driven by economic factors, they're driven by technology factors. And right now, with the introduction of AI, with the introduction of distributed ledger and these new types of money rails, you're able to leverage this perfect storm of circumstances and turn that into not a single point solution, but a multitude of solutions that can be deployed single point modularly, but be done in a way that allows these financial institutions to consolidate those vendor relationships. And really, what it's all about at the end of the day is creating a seamless experience, a cohesive experience, not just for the member, not just for the customer, but also for the employees of the bank. Because what we've found is that when you have to manage 20 or 30 pieces of software, a lot of things fall through the cracks. Fraud falls through the cracks. Security starts to become a lot harder to manage. Operationally, training, tribal knowledge starts to leave. And so by being that consolidation point for these financial institutions, and by allowing ourselves to I kind of paint it like this. If we were talking a year ago, the market response to the product set was, how does this work within our existing framework, right? They were coming to us to ask us how our products could work and fit within their strategic roadmap and their existing framework. Just in the last few months, probably in the last 60 days, 90 days, the pivot, it's been 180, and they're no longer coming to us asking us how we can tell us how our product fits into their strategic roadmap because they couldn't figure it out, or it was still early enough to where they were still trying to figure it out. There were financial institutions that were figuring it out. What the pivot has been is now they're coming to us and saying, hey, we have a strategic roadmap for the next 2 years. You fit 60, 70% of the critical items on that roadmap. And here's how we want to go at it. We want to launch payments first. We want to launch, Prospera first. We want to launch Remint. We want to launch Remint for stablecoins. We want to launch Remint for real-time payments, or we want to launch real-time payments, then stablecoins, then tokenized deposits. Then we want to launch lending on stablecoins or lending on digital assets. And then we want to launch Prospera. So that it's flipped completely to where these financial institutions have gone from trying to figure out how this fits into their roadmap to coming to us telling us this is how it fits in our roadmap, and this is why we find you guys as that consolidation point for us to say, if there's 5 things on their roadmap and we do all of them, but maybe they're not all this year, instead of having to sign with a single point vendor and then go find a single point vendor for the next item and a single point vendor for the next item, they can actually just say, okay, good, we can focus on this item. We know that we'll do this with you guys next. We know that we'll do this with you guys next. And that's turned into people being able to sign deals. What used to be a 6 to 9 month window to sign deals is now a 45 and 60-day process. So we're seeing a tremendous uptick in interest on the inbound side of people no longer wanting or needing to understand what this is, but now needing to understand in what order they do it so that they can fit their strategic roadmap. And it's radically changed our go-to-market strategy, our discovery strategy with these financial institutions, and it's put them in a position. I mean, how great is this to be able to put the financial institution in a position to not have to sacrifice strategy for implementation, to be able to say, I can do both. I can look at my strategy and I can plan my implementation. Because what they're having to do now is they're having to look at their strategy and look at their implementation in different buckets, because they have to look at the cost of 5 vendors for solution 2 and the cost of 5 vendors for solution 3 and the cost of 5 vendors for solution 4. They still have to do that, but it's much easier to have one vendor that ticks all the boxes and then compare that one vendor to the host of vendors on the other side. So that's been our strategic advantage. That's been our strategic pivot. It's been a tremendous several months. I made some comments the other day, and I really, it it is what it is, and I try to speak as candidly as I can, as much as I can. And it's just a fact that we've got so many NDAs out there right now. It's hard to list the institutions. It's hard to list what they're doing. We are a white label solution, so we sit behind the scenes, and so it's really upon the financial institution. If we're being used in back end flows, like for real time payments and for RTP receive, for FedNow receive, if we're being used for something like that, and we've got an NDA, we really can't say anything about it. If we're being used for back-end flows, for stablecoin flows, we can't say anything about it. And so, you really have to, I'd love to be able to come out and give you the entire list of who's in the pipeline, who's in the backlog, who's signed, who's onboarded. Certainly, I've named handfuls today on this call, and there's so many more behind it. But these are some of the ones that we interface with daily, and they're such great supporters of us. They give us feedback, and they love working with us in the collective. We've recently run some AI pilots and agentic pilots operationally for these financial institutions to reduce fatigue, reduce um, um, outcomes that would result in unexpected or unwanted member experiences and customer experiences. And so um, that whole combination of brand positioning and strategic positioning has put Bank Social and our team at the forefront of products and against the strategic roadmap, and you're seeing it across the board with engagement. Um, I think certainly a lot of what we talk about can be anecdotal. It's like how many versus the market, and what's the total addressable market, and I can give you numbers, but if I'm not able to tell you the who's and the whys, it feels anecdotal. But when you start to look at engagement across LinkedIn, where we are just under your Jack Henrys, we're just under your Alchemies. These are behemoths in the financial world, and to even be close to these guys is really just a truly humbling experience. And then to even be edging out some of your you know most forward-looking fintechs like a Q2. What a great product that is, and to be able to be up there on engagement, and to have people engaging with our brand and reaching out to our brand at that level, in a quarter of the time is such a humbling thing. And that's really been driven by every one of you guys that's out there in the community, all the great credit union leaders, all the great Bank Social DAO community members. You ask for your credit union by name. I can't tell you how many times asking for a credit union by name, or credit union leaders, how many times an introduction has turned into an eye-opening experience for a financial institution, whether that be a credit union or a fellow community bank. And so we really appreciate all of that. It continues to help us gain leverage and amplify the mission, which is that we are working to be the financial freedom provider for the entire world. We talked about a few months back at Davos, not even a few months back, it's been less than 30 days, signing with Confed, the Coconut Farmers Federation of the Philippines. 3 million people, 3 million farmers. We just talked about that on our board meeting, and I can share that. Even though there's confidentiality behind some of that deal that I can't share, I can certainly share that we are engaged with those guys. And you guys know that Hedera has been engaged with the same group. And so there's an entire initiative there now to really start to penetrate internationally, tie that domestically with these cooperative institutions. And we're really fundamentally transforming the entire world. I was talking with a lady last night. I know that's a big dream, and I know that sounds like a big ambitious goal, big audacious goal. BHAG, big hairy audacious goal, as JR would say, John Reed. But you know that's really fundamentally what we're doing. We just signed another, or in the process, we've got an MOU with another Latin American bank. Again, I try to be as candid and direct as I possibly can with telling you guys where everything is at. And that really is fundamentally, these tools we're deploying are fundamentally transforming how these people in these countries financially are able to be free. And that's starting to resonate here. It resonated immensely at Davos, and it turned into several deals. Oh, you're perfectly fine. And so we're going to continue pushing all these initiatives forward at the pace that makes sense. Again, because these are banking institutions, because we are dealing with regulatory, regulatory guidelines. I won't call them headwinds. In some cases, they've now become tailwinds. Genius Act is a perfect example of that. But you're starting to see that play out all over the world. Central banks. I've had meetings with several central banks over the past few years, and we're really starting to see a shift towards community, towards working within the working within the communities that they already have established to provide additional help, to provide additional experiences, to bring that comprehensive financial platform, so that everybody has fair access to finance. And we're starting to see that play out worldwide, again, in places like Bolivia, in places like the Philippines, in places like South Africa, in places like the Ukraine. These are all places where we have active pilots or we have active clients going, and we continue to push that envelope, and while we continue to grow here domestically at a really great clip, we certainly continue to also grow internationally, at a steady clip as well. And ever since starting that mid last year, we've seen probably, as hey Ray, how's it going? Hey, come on over here. I'm on a live. Look, everybody, I'm not lying. It's Ray Fuentes.
What's going on, guys? We're here at the XRP meetup. We're going to be showcasing John Wingate, the CEO of BankSocial. He's going to be on stage with other white hats in this production.
Thank you so much, bro. All right. That was Ray. You guys know him. So we're about to kick off here in probably a couple hours. We're not too close to it, but nonetheless, a lot of great traction. We'll be talking a lot tonight about XRP and how that's working within the ecosystem. Of course, we'll touch on some Hedera and HBAR. Look out for the interview coming on the street. Big shout out to the street. Thank you guys so much, Ben. Thank you guys so much for having me out today and giving me that opportunity to voice what we're doing and to highlight and amplify that. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for getting us on the roundtable and having us be one of those voices that can consistently kind of provide insight into where the markets are going. Kind of staying away from really crypto native language and more so talking about, while absolutely crypto is a part of this thing, more so talking about how this is being embraced more generally, as just as a new rail. You don't talk about databases anymore. You just talk about money movement, and that's where we are. That's kind of the phase and the wave that we're in. So, thank you so much. I actually went a little bit longer than I was intending to go today, but just a tremendous day today, between the board meeting, between bringing on Jim Schneck, between this XRP meetup, between ETHDenver. It's been just a fabulous day. We're not done yet. I'm sure you'll get some more content and some more insights coming out of the XRP. I'll talk with Ray. I'll see if we can't set something up, or if they don't have something broadcasted to some degree, or maybe we can get some sound clips out to you guys. But oh, he's going to stream. Great. Okay, so we heard that. Sarah just let me know that Ray is going to be streaming. So we will share that stream on X tonight. I'm speaking at 6:30. I believe it's 6:30. Is it Central or Mountain Time? Let me see here. 6:30. Give me 1 second. Yeah, 6:30. I don't know, Sarah. I think it's 6:30 East Mountain Time, 7:30 Central. That's right. So 7:30 Central, 6:30 Mountain Time. Tune in. We'll be sharing the live stream. You'll be able to check that out. Maybe I'll even take some questions from people afterwards or beforehand. DM me if you want me to address anything specifically. We'll only have about 25, 30 minutes to chat through the topic. So I will have to be somewhat brief, and I will have to be a little selective on what we can talk about. But generally, thank you all so much. Always incredible support that we get from the community, both from the credit union and community bank space, and then of course the BankSocial and the crypto community. This has been a really great set of weeks here as we roll through 2026. All the love and all the power, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much.